A Charlottesville man now faces an upgraded murder charge in a Water Street shooting in January of last year. 20-year-old Taekwon Marquis Dean now faces first-degree murder charges after originally being charged with second-degree murder. Dean is accused of shooting and killing 22-year-old Jahaz Wilson back in January of last year in the West Water Street parking lot. Charlottesville's Commonwealth's attorney Joe Patania says that the decision to upgrade the charge came after a continued investigation. Dean will appear in Charlottesville District Court on June 11th. This is just the second time in 5 years that the city has charged someone with murder in the first degree.